Nancy Pelosi gets triggered. She gets triggered. She's on Wolf Blitzer. Now, what's happened just within the last, let's say, few hours, and I did this video once, so you're not insane, but I didn't like that video, and I finally got a clip of that previous video that I wanted. But basically, Nancy Pelosi, Democrats, $2.2 trillion stimulus plan. Trump initially comes out with 1.6, but comes out again with a $1.8 trillion. Now, I find it utterly appalling that the difference in the gap between these two is just what, about $0.4 trillion or $400 billion. And so you have this weird situation where these guys were willing to give tax cuts to oligarchs for trillions, and just this small gap makes the difference between what they're willing to give America. All of these workers, all of these people who go to their jobs, who make this country what this country is in regards to the way this country functions, this country hits the skids, and any notion of a social contract goes out the window because, again, in the election and the electoral process, it seems that the public was an afterthought. Now, Trump is saying go big or go home. That seems to be a shot across the bow at McConnell because McConnell was taking this process slow. And fact of the matter is, even if there was an agreement between Trump and Pelosi, you would still have difficulty in getting it through the Republican Senate. So several things are true at once with this. Is Pelosi, or would Pelosi drag this out from a standpoint of, yeah, we want 2.2 trillion, that's what we want, and use that as a club to hit Trump over the head that he's not giving this to the American public, and the fact that the American public, for the most part, is desperate and dragging it out to an election, all of which, to some degree, hurts Trump. After all, he's the one who's at the head of the government. Meaning whether Pelosi is doing that or not is secondary to the fact that Trump is hurt by the American public not having the resources distributed to the American public. Buck stops at the president. And to be honest, whether she's doing it or not, Trump should have just agreed to the $2 trillion, $2.2 trillion that Nancy Pelosi wanted. But this is where we are. So apparently the American public is not worth the $2.2 trillion, the paltry sum that the Democrats want. But Pelosi gets on Blitzer, and Blitzer reads something that Yang and something that Ro Khanna said. And Nancy Pelosi flipped out. She flipped out. Now, I make the argument that you get our vote when you represent our interests. And I express that interest very specifically in terms of policy. Whether that's Medicare for all, whether that's elimination of student debt, whether that's legalizing marijuana, whether that's making colleges and universities free, or at the very least state colleges and universities free. Now, Pelosi is in this fight, a tiff. I can't even call it a fight. It sounds like a tiff at the very end with Blitzer. And I want you to hear how Blitzer gets his last dig in at Pelosi. It's biting, and it pisses her off. She's very clearly, visibly upset. It's funny, so let's have some fun. Welcome to the Soapbox. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. If you guys dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. It is funny the way she gets pissed off at this. She really gets visibly angry and upset. And Blitzer does have a point. I mean, Blitzer's thing is, look, the American public needs the cash. Give up the cash. I think Pelosi's point is, I have leverage in this, and I want to exploit the leverage that I have at my disposal. Now, typically, Democrats don't do this. So I, at the very least, applaud this, let's say, spine in regards to whatever she's trying to pursue. Tepid applaud on that one. But Blitzer is not taking any shit off of Pelosi today. So let's take a look. This is the beginning of the clip when they get into the back and forth. Now, initially, I didn't have this portion, but I have this portion now. So let's listen to these two go at it.
Dollars is significant and more than twice the Obama stimulus, make a deal, put the ball in McConnell court. So what do you say to Ro Khanna?
What I say to you is, I don't know why you're always an apologist, and many of your colleagues, apologists for the Republican position. Ro Khanna, that's nice. That isn't what we're going to do, and nobody's waiting till February.
No.
All right. She calls him an apologist. I don't know why you're always an apologist. Now, here's the second one. She goes further. And as he's trying to end this, it gets into this back and forth tit for tat, as they're going out. But I want you to hear Wolf Blitzer's point, because this is somewhat of a biting point to Democrats who are supposed to deal with these issues of poverty and everything else. Is supposed to be the release valve or the escape valve for the for capitalism's rough edges. Well, here's the capitalistic rough edges. The billionaires got nearly $1 trillion, if not more at this point. And you have a lower class that took a boot to the mouth in our current system. Let's hear Blitzer go after Pelosi for that very specific point about a philosophical responsibility that was not lived up to.
Mr. Speaker, these are incredibly difficult times right now, and we'll leave it on that note. Thank you so much for joining
we'll
us.
leave it on the vote that you are not right on this, Wolf, and I hate to say that to you, but I feel confident about it, and I feel confident about my colleagues, and I feel confident in my chairs.
And it's not about me. It's about millions of Americans who can't put food on the table, who can't pay the rent,
and
who are
we
having
represent
trouble,
them, and
who
we
are
represent them,
getting
and
by
we represent
these
them,
long food
and
lines
we
that we're
represent
seeing.
them.
I know
we
you
know
are.
them.
I'm just saying.
We represent them, and we know them.
As we say,
know them. We represent them.
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, as they say.
It is
here in
nowhere
Washington.
near perfect.
Madam Speaker.
Always the case, but we're not even close to the good.
All right, let's see what happens, because every day is critically important. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for your sensitivity to our constituents' needs.
I am sensitive to them because I see them on the street begging for food, begging for money. Madam Speaker, thank you so much.
Have you fed them? We feed them. We feed them.
We'll continue this conversation down the road for sure. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Wow, that's unhinged. That's unhinged. We feed them. We feed them. We feed them. Do you now? Do you feed them, Nancy? I mean, look. This country could have taken an anti-poverty policy. They didn't do that. And just before the COVID-19 virus hit, you had nearly half of the country impoverished. You had a previous Democratic president that allowed homeowners to go bust. And many people, for many people, especially most, the value is in their homes. And so the moment that you let people's homeowners go bust, especially African Americans, you basically cut out a large segment of wealth from those people's lives. Whether he's a quote-unquote apologist, whether Nancy Pelosi is hitting him correctly, saying you always take the Republican position on it, and look, whether Nancy Pelosi is right or wrong to some degree depends on whether you believe that Trump's plan at 1.8 trillion cut something out significantly so, or for that matter, whether you believe Nancy Pelosi has some level of leverage that she has at her disposal to implement and to get her will accomplished. And all of this stuff, I got to be honest, is somewhat of a mess. None of this stuff is good for the American public. And like I said before, it looks like the American public is an afterthought to these kind of political whims and power plays at their disposal, especially around an election. They've let this go for months. They knew very well that that number was at some point was going to go down, meaning they knew that they were going to hit that deadline. And they knew that over the horizon of that deadline, there were going to be retail businesses shutting down, people getting hurt because they don't have the additional income from the stimulus. It wasn't like they didn't know this was coming. And so Wolf Blitzer is sticking Nancy Pelosi with this notion of you guys aren't doing your philosophical responsibility of ensuring that people are taken care of. And to that, She says, I feed them. Like, I feed them with my own bosom. Well, you don't feed them with your own bosom. And him pointing to the food lines is making that point that much more clear. I'll leave it at that. I mean, it's like what he said about it, right? There are food lines, and those food lines are all across the United States because, yeah, people are hungry. People have lost their jobs. People have lost the means to which they use to feed themselves. And so, Pelosi getting here feeling some kind of way about it doesn't really matter to me, especially since she was dancing in front of that $12,000 refrigerator. I'm sorry, 2 of those refrigerators filled with ice cream. So yeah, I don't have this feeling that she feeds them out of her $100 million bosoms. No, Blitzer, whatever he's trying to get at in this very specific instance, does have a point. You guys have failed to do your jobs in ensuring that the public is made whole. I can't say Wolf Blitzer has helped all that much in that. But nevertheless, he does have a point. Like, share, and of course, subscribe. Thanks all.